Chapter 7. New opportunities for student welfare. Unmotivated people who are interfering with this natural motivation. If we start to look, we find the oppression of prejudice, being constantly subjected to prejudice. The overexertion of doing anything to respond to a continuous examination, an imposed goal. Systematic structural pressure. How to access. Questioning and allowing freedom in artistic expression, etc. The COVID crisis offers us a new learning opportunity on a personal and group level. At the psycho-emotional level, coping with fear and loneliness. At the systemic level, mental health pressure, how to deal with a pandemic. IND. Human rights. Basic needs covered. Lifestyle. Body awareness, fresh air, food, screens, coping with illnesses from a place of taking care of oneself and not anesthetizing oneself. Family. School. Emotional education, how your brain works, emotional management schools. Community. Support networks. Cooperative spaces. Mesolimbic reward system. This system is in charge of contrasting the present with our happy images, giving rise to the feeling of happiness, a biochemical cocktail composed of dopamine, feeling of pleasure and motivation, endorphins, well-being, serotonin, mood, and oxytocin, confidence. How to lower cortisol. Exercise is one of the most effective forms of exercise if it is practiced regularly and according to each body's needs. This encourages the production of serotonin and dopamine, hormones that reduce anxiety and help fight depression. If the practice is too hard, then the body interprets it as a threat. Healthy social life. In the body there are between 5 trillion and 200 trillion cells, depending on the human being, age, sex, etc. The environment of the cell is the blood. The composition of the blood is decisive for the fate of the cells. Who controls the blood? The neurohormonal system is key. A curious fact has been investigated: if I bring the cell into a toxic environment, it gets sick. If I surround it with a healthy environment, it gets healthy. Both the environment of the cells and the information received by the membranes play a fundamental role. Something similar happens in people. Meditation and mindfulness. P210 Marion. Lifestyles, wellness trends, and techniques. The 8 basics of motivation and other engagement strategies. Conclusions. Definition. Well-being schema. Each person can develop their own view on what these needs are for themselves. It is a part of the personal process that each person has to go through. Once we have recognized these needs, we have to start organizing our lives, taking care of them. In order to evaluate our progress, keep track of our achievements and difficulties, we can set small goals in relation to each of our needs. These goals should be simple, attainable, measurable, and have a deadline. This will help us assess how we are doing and identify the areas that require the most attention. We have considered the following as the main human needs in general. They need to be given equal importance in our lives in order to ultimately achieve a desired and balanced well-being. Food. We need high-quality, healthy, and balanced meals, clean water, clean air, and safe sun exposure. Unfortunately, we live in societies where economic profit prevails over people's well-being. Capitalism favors fast food, dangerous chemicals, unhealthy eating habits, and so on. As a result, we have adopted many unhealthy eating trends that intoxicate us and hinder our bodies from functioning well. Considering that we are what we eat, we should take better care of this basic human need for our well-being. Sleep. Our bodies and minds need rest and sleep. Rest plays a role in our body's ability to properly process food, nutrients, experiences, and more. Other factors also influence our ability to get adequate rest, such as exercise and the quality of the food we consume. Everything is interconnected. Most of us today live in a fast-paced life, which is detrimental to us in various ways. Many adults are stressed and exhausted. We have become accustomed to living without quality of life, lacking spirit or enthusiasm, which only makes us more tired. We need both our bodies and minds to slow down, and the intensity of our lives to soften, so that we can engage in necessary repair work. Only then will we have a chance to regain vitality and health. Sleep used to be thought of as a time for the brain to take a break. In reality, some parts of our brains are more active at night, processing experiences accumulated during wakefulness. Experiments on humans highlight the effects of learning, even in infants. Sleep is now considered a cognitive process in which the activities of certain brain regions play a decisive role in lifelong learning and memory. For this reason, sleep intervention programs could be used to improve learning. Physical activity. We need daily movement, we are active creatures. Only through physical exertion do we produce certain necessary hormones. Children are a good example of vitality and how to use it with creativity and flexibility. We need to engage in regular and intelligent, not rigid or excessive anaerobic and aerobic exercises, stretching, and more to maintain good muscle tone. Unfortunately, our active nature is altered by the oppressive societies in which we live, characterized by stereotypes, fast-paced lives, misinformation, sedentary lifestyles, and so on. Our lives and attitudes towards physical exercise have been impaired, and that is why we must pay special attention to this important aspect of our lives when seeking wellness. Daily tasks. To ensure our survival, we need to engage in various daily tasks, whether it is seeking shelter, hunting, harvesting, fishing, weaving in the past, or different jobs in today's world. Nowadays, these old tasks have been socially organized mainly through unjust structures such as companies and cooperatives. While it may be controversial to consider paid work as a basic human need, we still and will continue to need to do things to obtain the tools we need to survive, feed ourselves, and have shelter. We can refer to this as work. Unfortunately, in today's world, work should be an activity based on creativity and enjoyment, leading to the development of people. Something fair for everyone. That is why we consider work to be one of the basic needs to be addressed in order to improve our well-being. Good information. Human beings like learning new things, exploring the world and their minds, and seeing how far a thought or reasoning can go. Our ability to learn is one of our greatest qualities and provides us with great satisfaction. Despite the fact that Western societies offer numerous opportunities for learning and vast amounts of diverse information, it is a significant challenge for the human mind to discern its quality and accuracy. As a result, we often find ourselves living in confusion and uncertainty regarding certain issues, experiencing what is known as the era of misinformation. Unfortunately, throughout life, we encounter learning difficulties and become discouraged, often due to school or parental pressures. These challenges can lead to a loss of interest in reading, hinder the proper development of our judgment, and make it difficult for us to seek quality information. Therefore, it is crucial to maintain our curiosity about the universe, our ability to learn, and our capacity to distinguish reliable information. Creativity. Creativity aids us in learning and expressing ourselves in various ways, according to each person's needs. To complete the learning process, it is important to put the information we receive into practice. Active participation in developing our own projects, processing and expanding information, and presenting it in ways that broaden our perspective are essential aspects. Learning through creativity is inherent to our nature as creative beings. Children exemplify this through imaginative play, constructing tree houses with sticks, concocting magic potions with herbs, and engaging in various other creative endeavors. As adults, we often engage in uncreative, tedious, and monotonous tasks or challenges that do not stimulate our abilities, interests, and imagination. Regardless of our age or circumstances, it is important to nurture and encourage our inner expression, creativity, and playful attitudes, as these processes are crucial for personal development and growth. Relationships. Just as human beings are composed of billions of cells that require collaboration and interaction to function effectively, human relationships also depend on this cooperation to thrive. Cooperation is fundamental to human survival and reproduction, an intrinsic aspect of our human nature. We can readily observe this innate tendency in the natural cooperation exhibited by children, barring any complications during pregnancy or birth. In order to develop and enjoy life to the fullest, we need to cultivate healthy relationships of various kinds, ranging from superficial to intimate connections and everything in between. Expressing affection, feeling loved, and having companionship as we navigate the world are essential. However, the oppressive societies we inhabit constantly attempt to divide and disconnect us. We are conditioned to prioritize competition, consumerism, objects, and productivity over human connections. This separation from others, our environment, and ourselves deeply affects and influences us. Building and maintaining relationships is thus fraught with difficulties and tensions. Intimate relationships, with their deeper connections, are especially challenging, and conflicts within them can be complex. Over time, we may come to believe that relationships are demanding, confusing, and intricate, which can lead to social awkwardness or isolation. Since relational skills are not consciously taught in families or schools, each individual must discover how to navigate them independently. Therefore, continuous training and adjustment of our interpersonal skills are necessary. Taking a pause to reflect on the social pressures we all face, understanding how they impact our connections with others, and striving to improve our relationships and provide support can be beneficial. Emotional care. All the needs we have mentioned for our basic well-being, eating quality food, getting good rest, having good relationships, learning and being creative, having reasonable and fair jobs, etc., are deeply interconnected with our feelings. It is very difficult to take good care of all these factors when we are under the influence of inner resistances, resulting from confusing information stuck in our brain, anxieties. Later we will explain in detail what inner resistances are and how to deal with them. Even if we are able to rationally distinguish what is good or bad for our well-being, our inner resistances prevent us from doing the right thing. Because we are under the subjugation of certain confusing feelings and beliefs, which prevent us from changing our habits and improving our lives, thinking and doing can be two completely different things. These old and accumulated feelings do not allow us to think and act right. Therefore, it is of utmost importance for our overall well-being to take good care of and dedicate time to our feelings and emotions. 4. If we manage to feel good and get rid of our inner resistances, it will be easier to satisfy the basic human needs necessary for a healthy and fulfilling life. To understand how we manage feelings and emotions, it is important to remember that, on a daily basis, many experiences happen to us that our mind needs to process and store correctly for future use. In addition, our mind also needs to discard the residual confusing information from those events that were harmful, toxic to us. We can make a simile with what our body does with food: we process it, we keep what we need and what is good for us, and finally we expel the residues that we don't need or that are toxic to us. Just as we digest food with certain bodily processes, our mind also digests information with certain bodily strategies, by expressing what has happened to other people, either by crying, laughing, yawning or shaking, or by telling, once we learn to communicate with words. As these internal mechanisms for communicating and processing difficulties are not understood, nor accepted by our societies, they are continually disrupted, from birth, affecting our ability to digest and expel residual and unnecessary information from certain daily experiences. Everyone, regardless of age, is subject to this suppression of emotional recovery mechanisms. Every day we witness, wherever we are, in the street, in schools, with our own families, etc., that when children cry, they immediately have an army of adults around them trying to calm them down, with various strategies. Or in other words, they repress their emotional expressions and outbursts, thus interrupting the physical release process that the mind needs to do to digest a certain event, leaving harmful, confusing or toxic information in our mind and profoundly affecting our learning and development. Therefore, the accumulated and unprocessed confusing information that gets trapped in our mind gives rise to behaviors, habits, beliefs and thoughts that directly affect our opinions, decisions and quality of life. If we go back to our simile, it would be as if after eating, when we want to get rid of substances that we do not need or that are toxic to our body, the adults around us try to prevent us, all the time, from going to the toilet. It may seem a strange comparison, but it helps to understand the senselessness of interrupting emotional bodily detoxification processes, while encouraging others, going to the toilet. No one dares to doubt the body's need to get rid of food waste, but when it comes to emotional waste, every attempt is made to prevent us from getting rid of it, so that we keep the toxic information inside our mind, confusing us. The adults we are talking about are mothers, fathers, relatives, friends, teachers, etc., who want the best for our own good, but who also did not have good emotional support in their lives, no good role models, no healthy references. In addition, they also did not receive any training to support us emotionally. It is very hard when we get caught up in a lot of intense feelings and there is no one around to understand us and help us to use these emotional recovery processes. Over time, we begin to not trust other people and lose our ability to communicate and express how we feel. We learn to self-suppress these innate, internal, detoxification mechanisms and live without them. We have been taken away and disconnected from our body's main emotional recovery mechanisms. Eventually, we do not understand them, nor are we aware of the positive effect they have on an emotional level, and we lose our zest for life. When we reach adulthood, we find it really difficult to reconnect and use these emotional outlets, because we have already settled for living without trusting other people, hiding our feelings and holding them in. Therefore, it is important to pay attention to and rescue these emotional recovery mechanisms, supporting each other in an organized way. Therefore, we can get rid of the emotional residues that confuse us and make us feel miserable or out of place. By building various kinds of networks to support each other, with understanding, empathy, and without prejudice, we will be able to show our emotions, question old beliefs, and exchange thoughts. We will be closer to fulfilling all the basic human needs for our holistic well-being. Motivation. When talking about education, the word motivation appears frequently, almost as a synonym. Children have to be motivated to learn, teachers have to have their students motivated, etc. Even from science there seems to be a consensus on the importance of this element for learning, as David Bueno and Gerald Huther, among others, tell us. The brain seems to function better and retain learning acquired with emotion and motivation for longer. Good. But what are we talking about when we talk about motivation? Is being motivated the same as feeling motivated? The more the better. It seems essential to me to differentiate between the types of motivations that exist in order to avoid confusion. When these confusions arise in our daily lives, they can have negative repercussions on the teaching and learning processes within the classroom. Moreover, such misunderstandings can also impact the evolutionary development of each individual, influencing how a child perceives themselves and how they relate to their environment. There is an external motivation, that is to say, it comes from outside and seeks to encourage a behavior or action through positive reinforcement. In this line we find rewards of all kinds, from stickers or smiley faces for a job well done, to lollipops or larger gifts on completion of a task, generally assigned by the adult. The premise of this type of motivation is that people, in general, need stimuli from outside to carry out any activity, and it is the role of the adult to keep this dynamic constantly going. The other type of motivation is internal motivation, which refers to a search that originates from within oneself in order to carry out a task for the sheer satisfaction of doing it, the sense of accomplishment it entails, or the enjoyment derived from the process. This presupposes confidence in each person's vital impulse, their initiative, and their desire to contribute and fulfill themselves. In this case, the role of the adult would be to create environments that foster this internal connection, and facilitate the execution of spontaneous activities that emerge from the child. Knowing both motivations better, we might think, okay, internal motivation is good, but if we can reinforce it from the outside as well, even better, right? No. It turns out that they cannot be used in combination to enhance motivation in general, because a curious thing happens. Extrinsic motivation, most of the time, is to the detriment of intrinsic motivation, i.e., someone who starts doing something on their own initiative, and receives a reward for what they did tends to lose the initial impulse to do the task. It is as if it is no longer theirs, but someone else's, and they are no longer so interested in it. A number of studies show how external motivation decreases internal motivation, rather than increasing or adding to it. While there are surely many nuances to be made on this issue, at the very least it should serve to reflect on the effects of constantly using the external reinforcement of rewards and praise to get children to do their homework. Not only does this type of intervention quickly lose its effect, but it also makes children dependent on adult approval and, more seriously, teaches them that they are not capable on their own of having their own interests and resources to develop them. Breathe. Breathing is the most important source of life, more important than food or water. It sustains us minute by minute and, curiously, breathing is the first thing we block in order not to feel. We seem to use only a tenth of our lung capacity. If we do not expand our lungs, we store up mucus that is never cleared. Oxygen does not reach the body properly and constant intoxication weakens us, leading to less resistance to the vicissitudes that come our way. At the same time, the diaphragm is blocked, reducing movement in the upper part of the thorax. Slow, deep, rhythmic breathing balances the body-mind and stimulates the parasympathetic system, slows the heartbeat, and relaxes the muscles. Simultaneously, it relaxes the mind. Increased oxygenation of the brain tends to normalize brain function by reducing excessive levels of anxiety. Consequently, changing and expanding our breathing, as well as relaxing it, alters our perception and, therefore, our emotional landscape. Releasing the belly and abdomen is essential for free and fluid breathing. Even culturally, we block this part by hiding our belly to fit into stereotypical canons of beauty. Breathing gives us a way to be intimate with ourselves and allows us to get in touch with others. Interestingly, the lungs are understood as the only internal organ that contacts the outside. Breathing is the real pathway to sensation, both to what we like and dislike. So the best way not to enter into the present experience is to slow down the breathing. Breathing that is not flowing has an anesthetizing effect. On the other hand, conscious breathing helps us to open and also to hold the emotion. We can take the breath as an ally. Conscious breathing is a privilege and a responsibility, as no one can breathe for you. Steps in a process of inner inquiry. Unmasking the misleading discourses and belief systems that underpin our way of thinking. Discovering behavioral patterns, automatic reactive circuits, and the emotions they provoke. Recognizing emotional coping mechanisms, the dominant passion, knowing our adapted child. To organize the map of the family system's linkage network. To understand the vital pulse of the character, that creation that our childhood soul needed to survive. Getting in touch with one's own shadow. Realize the voices that keep the game going, the internal struggle. Dialogue with the body and its symptoms. Facilitate emotional, physical, and energetic release and unblocking. To disidentify oneself from the character, from one's personal history, and to rediscover one's essential being. Train in a meditative state of mindfulness of the present moment. To be able to choose more freely every movement in our valuable direction, assuming what this entails. To transcend our own egoic script in order to be able to accompany other essential beings in freedom and love. This process of inquiry focuses transversely on the fact that the cause of all conflict lies in the interpretation that the client makes of a given situation in the here and now. Beliefs and interpretations generate the perception that causes suffering. It is necessary to be able to give yourself permission to feel from a practice of conscious observation, questioning the veracity of our personal history, since it only exists in the past, i.e., it does not exist. The interest in looking at it is based on being able to observe a map in which the subconscious recordings manifest themselves in the only instant where they can be experienced. The present instant. Dynamic motivation, obstacle, and valuable guidance. Objective: to observe, feel, and integrate obstacles to motivation. Description: in pairs. Use the partner as an obstacle or motivation. This can be done as a trio, one person as an obstacle and the other as a motivation. Confront people and let them spontaneously feel what is happening to them on a subtle or energetic level. For the next technique, think of those things that you would like to do, but for some reason, some obstacle conditions or prevents you from doing them. 1. What would you do if you were not afraid? What would motivate you to do what you want to do? Direction: exercise. Need: to be healthy. Motivation: to be good for my children, to be liked. 2. With a partner, take a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. On the left side, write down things you would like to do, starting with, if I were free. I would sing in public, I would show my body. 3. On the right side, write down what is preventing you, what is the obstacle. An emotion, a relationship, a thought, a context, patterns and beliefs that have conditioned you or set your course. E.g., I am prevented from singing by the belief that I don't know how to do things well. 4. Choosing an area on which to focus, the target on which to aim the address. Valuable. Work, relationship, family, personal, social. It can help to express your vital desires without censorship, in general, in order to be able to choose a field of work. The therapist listens and helps to focus on the subject that is of most interest to the client. 5. Standing. It is about imagining that in front of us is the motivation, the person, idea, or thing we want to reach. In the middle is the obstacle that we represent with some physical object. The obstacle can be a belief, a fear, an emotion, a behavior pattern, a projection. Very slowly we start a movement towards the motivation in front of us. It is about feeling ourselves, observing our emotional movement, and facing it. We can use the word, but it is about observing what our body is doing, being able to include it and breathe it in. The therapist is in the position that the client has indicated to her. She can represent the motivation. She can be behind offering a look. 6. Sharing in the couple. First, the one who did the process speaks. 7. Change of role. Process and sharing in pairs. 8. Group debriefing. Materials and space. Please note, during the session we do not establish dialogue. From the place of facilitation, we can talk about how a bond is being established, from the energy that begins to mix to the physical and verbal contact. It's not about getting there, it's about realizing what the obstacle is. RAIN meditation. RAIN emotional regulation exercise. Sit in a comfortable position and relax any unnecessary tensions you may have by taking a few deep breaths. If it helps, you can take in air through your nose and blow it out through your mouth for 4 breaths to help you maintain your intention. To do this, bring to mind a difficult situation you have recently experienced and focus on the stimulus, the word, the act, the thought that throws you off balance. With mindfulness, we are learning to observe thoughts, feelings, reactions, like clouds in the sky. Some feelings can seem like big, really heavy clouds that pull us out of balance. This exercise will help you to observe difficult emotions and reactions in a balanced way, so that even if the clouds get wet, they do not flood your life. The acronym RAIN can help you to remember the phases. R to recognize. A to accept. And to investigate. N not to identify yourself. We start with the letter R by bringing to your mind that unpleasant, difficult situation where your emotions, or how you have reacted, are not quite as you would like them to be. The first step is to recognize and name any feelings you may be feeling. Simply find a word that can identify what you are feeling. For example, fear, doubt, grief, or you may simply feel a sense of tension, disconnection, or anything else. Maintain an attitude of curiosity about what you are feeling. The next step, the A of accepting. Accept what you are feeling right now, as it is part of your experience. Observe it without criticizing or judging yourself for feeling this way, without regretting reacting one way or the other, simply making space within yourself to allow yourself to observe your experience in this moment. Open yourself to feel the feeling for a few moments and let it express itself within you. You can keep a safe distance if you feel overwhelmed. The next step is to investigate. Investigate your experience a little more. Approach it with curiosity as an impartial observer and describe the sensations by turning your attention to your body. For example, tightness in the chest, pressure in the back, lump in the throat, upset stomach. Explore in detail the sensations of your present experience, investigating their particular pattern. Notice whether it is fixed or dynamic. Whether it is localized in one point or spreads over several points of your torso. Whether it is strong or weak. Whether it is sharp or pressure-like. Observe it in this way, trying to put as many labels on it as you can, simply observing it as when you observe the sensation in a foot or a hand. Also investigate its boundaries, where it expands to, and notice if there is any particular reaction that comes up as you do this, any thought or emotion, such as feeling guilty or unfortunate for feeling the way you feel. Continue for a few moments to acknowledge and accept whatever is part of your experience at this moment. If at any point you find it difficult, you can regain your strength by bringing your attention to the breath or to some other sensation that you find pleasant and reassuring. Notice if the intensity of the emotion changes, increases, or decreases as you inhale or exhale. This means not to identify yourself with the difficult experience. Observe your feeling, knowing that you are not your feeling, you are much more. Observe the activation it produces in you, simply observe it without having to react impulsively, or fight, or run away, or be paralyzed. See if you have the feeling or the feeling has you. After all, it is only a reaction, a set of sensations, but you are much more than that. See how you feel in this moment by simply learning from your experience as you stay with it. As you finish, you can bring an attitude of understanding and gratitude to yourself for having the courage to stay with your difficult emotions without struggling, without running away, without freezing, without reacting impulsively. Remember that while practicing mindfulness, you can sustain, redirect, and reintroduce whatever happens to you, no matter how difficult or unpleasant you find it.